was a big win versus the Richmond Tigers on the weekend, and we're here tonight to wrap it all up. Joining me tonight is Hank93, and we'll get straight into it. G'day, Hank. How you doing?
I'm good. Always good after a big win on the weekend, I would say.
Yeah, it was a nice win, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Richmond started pretty well, actually. Like the first sort of 10 minutes, the intensity was up and they probably got a hold of us, but they couldn't quite sort of build a lead big enough to convert those opportunities. And once we sort of, weathered the storm and then got our game going, then it was pretty much smooth sailing from there, really. Apart from a few 5-10 minute lapses in the second and third quarter, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right. Well, just before we get into it in more detail, let's just run through the scores from the weekend. Interesting round. We had on Friday night the Power looking less than impressive in getting up over the Essendon. I wasn't impressed by their game really at all. It was a bit of a schmozzle really. On Saturday, we had the Saints surprising victors over Collingwood. They're in real strife, I think, Collingwood at the moment. We had the Swans get up over the Giants in a pretty strong performance. I tipped the Giants there, so I was a bit disappointed with that one. Suns predictably accounting for Carlton pretty comfortably, 54 points. The Dockers, 3 losses in a row, is it now?
Yeah, that's right, yep.
Down by 33 against West Coast. And then today we had a very close one with the Kangaroos just getting up over Melbourne. 5 points there. We had the Cats easily accounting for the Lions at the Cattery. I think it was at the Cattery, wasn't it? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, correct.
And by all reports, a sensational game to finish off with the Bullies just falling short against the Hawks by 3 points. And I guess the talking point out of that one is Bob Murphy. I haven't heard the latest, but the word is an ACL.
Yeah, obviously no scans yet, but that's what the coach was saying after the game. So, and it looked, those ACLs where there doesn't seem to be a lot of contact, but the player just collapses, then that's pretty much exactly what happened.
Yeah, pity for the bloke, and a big body blow for the Bulldogs' chances because he's a bit of a general down back there, so all the best to him. No one deserves an ACL, and especially someone like him so late in his career. So, anyway, onwards and upwards to the Crows win. It was a pretty comfortable win in the end. 19 goals, 14, 128 to Richmond. 13 goals, 14, 92. So we got up by 6 goals in the end. You've given us some preliminary thoughts, Hank. Where do you reckon we won the game?
I think we're moving the ball pretty well, spreading pretty hard, and once again, sort of getting the ball on the outside, and a few of those goals are starting well inside the defensive 50, and we're going coast to coast quite a lot. So I think it's encouraging that we're able to move the ball so fluidly. But so far, probably our last 2 wins have been against teams that maybe were fancied in the pre-season. Richmond are struggling big time, and Port were pretty atrocious the week before. So, and even against Port, obviously we conceded quite a few inside 50. So hopefully we can maybe win some more games more off the back of dominating possession rather than starting a few chains from poor entries from the opposition.
Yeah, it's hard to get a gauge, isn't it? It's certainly I haven't rated Richmond all year. Based on pre-season and early season form. So I would have been disappointed with anything less than a 5-goal win. I actually thought we'd get up by 8 or 9, to be honest with you. Interesting point to note is the manner in which we're disposing of the ball and the efficiency with which we're moving the ball from one end to the other. Richmond had some players, 3 players above 30 possessions. Brandon Ellis nearly 40. And another 3 or 4, up in the mid-20s, whereas our highest possession winners were 28 from Crouch and Tomo, and then a few in the mid-20s, and then it's kind of fell away. So it just goes to show how efficiently we're moving the ball and efficiently we're using the ball, that the disposal count Not that it means a huge amount, but the disposal count is far more evenly spread without relying on massive numbers by a few players, which we may have done in the past.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've lost pretty much when you look at the team stats. We've lost pretty much almost every statistic known to man: disposals, kicks, handballs, contested possessions, lower on disposal efficiency, marks, contested marks, tackles. We won the clearances, but yeah, pretty much all the ones that you consider key performance indicators. We are behind on the scoreboard, but so I guess it's probably more encouraging that we're able to win when we're not winning the stats, but maybe we can win the ball a bit more against teams who are probably a bit more impressive than, say, Richmond and Port Adelaide have been so far.
Yeah, I have to say, and we were just talking before we came on, I'm probably not as bullish about the win as some people that have commented on the forums. Our scores from turnovers is astronomical at the moment, and our forward line pressure was very good as well this week, I felt. Probably the best it's been all season. But teams are getting through our defensive zone relatively comfortably, and I'll tell you what, if Richmond were a bit more efficient with the ball and actually use the ball a little bit better going into their inside 50, it might have been a bit more of a contest. So I'm a bit concerned against teams like Hawthorn who use the ball so much more effectively with our ability to hold them through the transition.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've obviously seen in the last 2 weeks that if we're in a bit of trouble and we are able to win the ball back, then we've got no problem in moving the ball well and spreading and running hard. But as you said, if we're playing, we've got the next 2 weeks are the Swans at home and then Hawthorn on the MCG. So you're not really going to get too bad a test of that. And it should be a good sort of test case to see how we cope against teams that maybe you do use the ball a bit better. And we might have to generate some of our scores from different avenues. So, I don't think we've got any problem with how we're using the ball at the moment, but maybe winning the ball first and then trying to not rely heavily on the opposition, stuffing it up is something that, I mean, even Pike mentioned that last week and after the Port Adelaide game, saying that he was impressed with the team's performance, but conceding in 70 inside 50s is not ideal. So we won the inside 50 count, I think, but obviously Richmond won plenty of the ball as well. So sort of a slightly similar story to last week.
Yeah.
Don't want to be too negative. We won by 6 goals and away from home and whatnot, but obviously there's still areas of improvement to come, that's for sure.
Yeah, certainly. I think our work around the contest was better despite Source getting a bit of a toweling really from Hampton. I thought Scotty Thompson was an absolute beast in and under and around the packs. Matty Crouch was very noticeable again with his deft handballs and whatnot. Obviously, off halfback, Seedsman and Smithers gave us so much rebound off halfback and really set up a lot of our thrust forward. And also, Rory Sloane probably had his best game for the year for the Mine. Got involved a little bit more, and some of his work through the clearances was pretty solid.
Yeah, we were talking about quite a few media commentators and the fans are talking about Adelaide's forward line and how potent it is. But you think on the weekend we had 2 goals from Tomo, Smith had 2 from 50, Rory kicked 2 goals outside 50. Douglas was hit the score sheet. He kicked 3 goals. Jared Lyons hit the scoreboard. So plenty of work from sort of the mid forwards as well. And if we can get Walker up and going, we should be all right there. But no, it's good to see plenty of midfielders using the ball well, but also hitting the scoreboard as well.
Yeah, it was good to see also that our structure didn't really fall down noticeably with the late withdrawal of Tommy Lynch. And congratulations to Tommy. I'm sure he's listening. So good on you, mate, for the birth of your daughter. But yeah, with Brad Crouch dropping out before the game and also Tommy Lynch, we didn't seem to suffer. I thought Jared Lyons did very well in place of in place of Brad, and I thought he probably earned another week, I reckon. And certainly Mitch McGovern playing that higher role, probably in Tommy Lynch's absence, didn't do too bad a job. Probably a couple of fundamentals to work on with Mitch at the moment.
Yeah, he's an interesting test case. He's still sort of, I think he's similar to Miller. Obviously, he doesn't win a lot of the ball, but when he does have it, he certainly sets. He does something with it. He's obviously a very good mark, and he's fast and applies some good pressure. He had 5 tackles on the weekend, so that's pretty good for a sort of a player that plays tall. So I think I'd like to see him get another go. I think it would be pretty harsh to drop him after that performance. And the two inclusions this week, obviously Jared Lyons was pretty damn good. He won plenty of the ball, 21 disposals, 2 goals, and 7 inside 50s for Jared. So be good at the stoppages and getting the ball inside 50.
Yep, definitely.
And I think he's probably, you'd have to say he's earned himself another shot next week. It helps when he's not starting as the sub. Obviously not this year anymore, but and Riley Knight was quiet and probably only a late inclusion due to quite a rare circumstance, obviously. So you'd have to think that Lynch is, a certain need to come back. And I think probably Riley Knight might be the only one to make way next week.
Yeah, the other query I've got is probably... Sorry, Rory Atkins is probably the only query, and I've been a big fan of Rory's this season. But for mine, he looked a little tired. He certainly got sorted out early with that front-on hit that left him a little bit dazed and confused for a few minutes. He didn't seem to get himself involved as much as the first 2 weeks. And when I was looking at his heat map on the AFL app, most of his possessions were confined very much to a small circle around half-back. Now, I couldn't tell whether he had a defensive assignment, but he just looked a little bit tired for mine, and maybe a week in the twos just to refresh mightn't be a bad deal for him.
Yeah, he had 9 touches and just the 2 kicks. So, I mean, he used the ball right, but he's probably one that may be on the chopping block if we do decide to make some changes. And the SNFL this week, we had Charlie Cameron kick 4 goals, so he's probably starting to put his name up for selection. You'd have to say he is a best 22 member, but just due to the interrupted preseason, he's been playing SNFL for the first few weeks. But he's got a good chance of coming back in. And Rory Atkins does play that sort of, I guess, mid-forward role in a way, so he could be one that makes way for Charlie. So, Rory...
I think if he stays in, he stays in for balance. If Riley Knight stays in, he's not playing too deep in defence. I'd be uncomfortable with Jared Lyons getting dropped after such a good performance, and also against Sydney's mids, it's pretty tough in the clenches against Sydney. So I wouldn't mind Jared in there next week.
Yeah, exactly. He's probably one of the... If you're going to discuss the sort of, I guess, the guys on the fringes, his performance was pretty damn good, and he's obviously going to be pretty important against Sydney, who are arguably one of the best contested teams in the competition. So he'd be pretty happy with his performance, and I think the coaches would be too.
Yeah, definitely. Just touching a little bit more on our structure. As I said, I was disappointed at times with the way Richmond were able to get through our zone. I know we don't play a high press, but we are playing a version of West Coast's defensive structure, and relying on halfback rebound continually, whilst it's been quite effective the past couple of weeks. We saw that, maybe against Kangaroos it might have been a structural issue with Hartigan not being selected, but I worry about teams like Hawthorn who crowd you up. They make the ground very small, and and they're very good at corralling players and applying pressure. And I just wonder whether our ability to release off halfback is going to be stymied by Hawthorn's game plan. It's going to be a good test when we play against them. I think the Hawthorn game, more than the Sydney game, is going to test our or Don Pyke's structure. I think the Sydney game is going to be won very much in the midfield.
Yeah, especially against the Hawks or the MCG and the wider ground, so they've got a bit more space to maybe play through us as well. And Walsh was quite a heavy believer in the press, and Pyke's probably playing a version of it, but maybe not quite as aggressive. So perhaps they're just learning, slightly new defensive game plan. And so far, the Crows have obviously been scoring at will, but still, I think their average conceding score at the moment is about 95 points. So defensively, where the guys down back are doing all right, but if you can sort of maybe quell the pressure, on the ball, that would be a step in the right direction. I don't think Pyke's plan is to concede that many inside 50s. As he said last week, that's not ideal. So I'm sure that's something that they're going to be working on in the next few weeks. Ball movement's looking pretty good at the moment, so that might not necessarily be a focus in comparison to a bit more defensive pressure around the ground, and obviously trying to maybe have slightly different setups as well.
Yeah,
or I think improve on them.
Yeah, certainly a team like Hawthorn is going to make our back six more accountable. They bat a lot deeper up forward than a lot of teams, and you're going to see guys like Seedsman and Smith having to play far closer attention to blokes like Burgoyne and Rioli and Gunston and those blokes coming through, and it makes you wonder whether we're going to have the same fluent transition out of our back 50. Time will tell, I guess. Couple of blokes I'm a little concerned about on an individual level. Sammy Jacobs had an interesting game. I felt it's probably the best game I've seen from him for a while in terms of his around-the-ground presence, although there were a couple of poor efforts defensively. But he got beaten in ruck by a guy who's not noted, as in the same class as Sauce. And I'm just a bit concerned. Sauce doesn't seem to be jumping well, and doesn't seem to be timing his jumps either in the middle. So what are your thoughts on Sauce?
Yeah, he was... what was the stats? 34 hit-outs to 28 against for Jacobs, and Hampson's obviously, as you said, not one of the hardly a premier ruckman in the competition, and he wasn't poor, but he probably, for his caliber against someone that's middle of the road, he would sort of want to lift his game. He played Goldstein in the first week, and I think Goldstein was arguably BOG, and the next 2 weeks he's played Lobie and Hampson, two guys who are probably either struggling or average, to say the least. So,
and Lobie wasn't humiliated against Sammy either, I didn't think.
Yeah, exactly. You look at Jacobs is probably not doing too badly around the ground. He's 17 touches for a ruckman's pretty solid. But yeah, just not quite doing it in the ruck at the moment. And as he said, he seems to maybe time his runs are a bit off. So who's Sydney's ruckman this week? Sinclair, or I'm trying to think.
With a bit of Tippett probably thrown in.
Yeah. So that they're hardly running with an A grade ruckman, and they're sort of just more two rotating rucks. So hopefully he gets the chocolates this week, and a bit of an improvement maybe, and that could be quite an important step into maybe winning a bit more ball around the ground, and not relying on that sort of defensive 50 scores that we have in the last couple of weeks.
Well, and it's kind of funny because second to our rebound 50 conversions is our conversions from stoppages. So whilst Sauce certainly isn't dominating around the ground in stoppages and ball-ins, we seem to be able to score relatively well comparatively to other teams from those situations. So, we get another 20% from Sauce, which I think he's got in him. And, who knows how much that can affect the scoreboard as well. It seems to me that Sam's worried about blokes jumping into him. He seems to be taking out their run very quickly at centre bounces in particular, and looking for the body very early on. And rarely does he actually run and jump. And I think against a bloke like Tippett next week, who doesn't mind jumping into the body, he's going to struggle again.
Yeah, so he sort of jumps early and then, as you said, sort of maybe puts the knee into the other guy and sort of waits for the ball to come down to him. So, as you said, Tippett's got a good leap on him, and the crowd's going to be pretty rowdy, so he's going to have to fire up against someone that's going to be booed relentlessly, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, another one that I thought we should discuss, because there's obviously, he's our whipping boy, D-Mac. I didn't actually think he had a bad game, but I can see people's points of view when they say it's a good game compared to David's normal standard. But I actually felt whilst he made some errors like most of the team, he was more than serviceable.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I think he had 15 touches, so didn't get a lot of the ball. But there was one moment. I think he had two sort of back-to-back handballs, and then kicked a very long ball inside 50 to set up a pretty good score. So that was one thing that came into my mind when I was watching and going, gee whiz, he's not doing too badly at the moment in the last 2 weeks. So again, like, it's a contentious debate, I guess. Some people are saying we've got guys in the SNFL who are best 22, like Cameron. But do you make those hard calls on players who have been reasonably solid in winning teams? So I guess it's a good debate for the coaches to have.
Yeah, look, personally, I don't think D-Mac is best 22 when you consider we've got Charlie in the twos, we've got Menzel to get some more fitness and come in. We've had Riley Knight come in this week, but we've still got Brad Crouch and Tommy Lynch to come back. I think at some stage D-Mac gets squeezed out. But that said, I don't think he's doing a bad job for the team at the moment. And I think when he finally finds himself in the twos, I don't think it'll be form so much as just someone in the twos that's just plainly better than him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, who could probably fill in from the SNFL at the moment? Maybe Henderson, Menzel, Cameron all sort of play that, I guess, quick-ish outside game. Henderson's probably the most to like.
Yep.
And Hendo had I didn't see the game, but looking at the stats, he obviously was reasonable. He had 26 touches, 17 kicks, and 11 marks as well. So
pretty serviceable.
Pretty solid, and he was pretty good in the final series last year. So he's probably another that you would say someone that had an interrupted pre-season and deserves to be in the best 22 based on 2015 form. So next couple of weeks are going to be interesting considering we're winning. I'd say Hendo and Cameron are probably the two most unluckiest players in regards to AFL selection at the moment. So it's going to be very intriguing this week, I would say.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if our selectors make what I consider a mistake, which is to not change the team just because we won. There's a couple of things there. Obviously, matchups plays a part, but I think you still have to look at your squad and see if you can improve it. And I think McKay's spot, particularly with Henderson, who I'd much rather see play on the wing than defensive, because defensively it just makes me cry. But further up the ground, as a link person, being able to use that big leg of his and he's good overhead as well. Probably the only thing he gives away to D-Mac, which is a surprising thing, is D-Mac's probably a bit stronger over the ball. I'd probably have Hendo in over D-Mac at some stage. As I said, I wouldn't mind them giving Rory Atkins a rest. I think he could possibly come out. But I can't see too many other outs. The only other bloke to discuss, I think, is Tex, and despite 3 goals too, doesn't look right to me.
No, he looks a little bit, I don't know what's the word, slow, or sort of not quite working around the ground as much as, say, you would like. We had that long kick from outside 50 after the Miller ankle breaker. But what was his other two scores? I'm trying to remember. But
We had one in close.
he missed one from 2 meters out as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But yeah, what did he have? 13 touches. So I guess he just looks off. He's not necessarily playing poorly. But you'd have to think that something's slightly wrong. It's not like he's got a major injury, but maybe it's just something slightly, not enabling him to run out the game completely. And what was his time on ground? 88%. So he played most of the game out.
Yeah. He just doesn't look dynamic, does he? He doesn't look as if he's got any real power. He doesn't look confident in the air. And look, really, ever since his ACL, he hasn't looked confident in the air. He goes up one-handed quite regularly, and he's very worried about landing. And this habit that he's got it into of trying to push players under the ball or drag them under the ball and get them behind, and or feeling very hard for the body in a one-on-one marking contest. It's starting to become an issue with Tex. I'd like to see him just have a game where he leads hard, like we know he can, and kicks those long goals. That's what we need him to do.
Yeah, and he's a funny player to watch. Like some things he'll do, you just go, "Wow, that's unbelievable." Like the goal from sort of 60 out, and it was post high, and he couldn't have kicked it any better. But then there's just other moments where like some field kicking that he has. He obviously had one of the best field kicks of the whole season last year when he set up Cameron 30 out in front for the final. But then there are other ones where he just sort of completely miskicks it, or sort of either tries to kick it too hard, or it's just you never really know what to expect from him. He's not very reliable at the moment. So at the moment, because the draw is as tough as it is, it's sort of no real, I guess, match where you could pinpoint a moment where you could rest him. Because
no,
I mean, like we don't know whether he's injured or not, but he sort of looks, I guess, maybe 10% off the pace. Is that probably fair?
Yeah, I'd say he looks heavy to me. He looks heavy on his legs to me. He doesn't look as if he's running freely. He doesn't look as if he can turn. I don't know. In his younger days, he was far more dynamic. Now he just seems to be very much a straight line player.
Yeah, what's his? Have you got his goal tally there? We kicked 3 on the weekend, but
so he'd be on about 8, wouldn't he? Would he get 3 against Port? Did he?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, and maybe was it just the one against North?
Maybe 2.
So he's not
9 or 10.
Yeah, he's doing all right, but for your premier key forward, he's probably almost playing sort of second or third fiddle to say Jenkins and Lynch, and then cameos of midfielders who are doing it right at the moment. So I guess we'll wait and see until they come out and say he's got something, which they're not. They wouldn't really. I don't think they would publicly admit that, but it's more of a watch this space, I would say, for
think
Walker.
So. And again, it'll be interesting to see if there is an issue, how they manage it, given that as captain, I don't think Tex would be too keen about dropping out for a week if he can help it. But I think the bigger picture might suggest that if he is carrying a niggle, having a week or 2 off, and it's not as if, maybe it's a situation where we push Josh a bit deeper, and that might be the perfect time to bring Menzel in and see if he can work a little bit of magic.
Yeah, and maybe wait for the a team that's got the defensive setup that sort of suits maybe dropping a key forward. And Jenkins has obviously been playing pretty well this year so far. So I think he could play, maybe as the lone key forward for a week or 2.
Yeah.
That might even be good for his, development anyway. So, we're not. I don't think we want Tex out of the team for too long, but if 1 week is enough to sort of maybe get him going again, that's probably not a bad thing.
No.
But also you don't want it to cost the team at all, because while he was maybe off the pace, he still had some important moments on the weekend as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I think our current system doesn't rely on big contested marks up forward. We're relying on the short hit ups or the long goals. So I think, hopefully if there is a niggle, rather than he goes through the season playing at 75%, I'd much rather see him try to get it right. We do have alternatives in the twos. Even a bloke like Ramsey can come in if needed. Mitch McGovern is good overhead. We've got options. If anywhere where we've got options, it's up forward. So there's no need for him to be a martyr about it.
Yeah, I think the way that we're moving the ball at the moment, as you said, we're not really relying on contested marking. And on the weekend, Richmond had 19 contested marks to 5, so we got smashed in that department. But the way that we're moving the ball at the moment, if we can keep it up, might not necessarily rely on, two big gorillas up there. So,
Yep.
I'd be surprised if they pulled the trigger, but, it's not out of the question.
Yeah. And just to wrap up the discussion, how good's Wayne Miller? For God's sake.
Yeah, well, as many people have sort of said on the forum, I might need to change my avatar every week if he's playing like this. So he's young, he's new, and he's not going to be winning 15, 20 possessions a week. But it's what he does is very exciting, and he's got composure. He's very agile, obviously. He's for 2 weeks in a row, he sort of danced around the man on the mark. So, and I think he really only might have had one or two poor moments, but he sets up goals. And if this is what he's doing in his third game, I'm looking forward to what he's going to be doing for the next 150 to 200 games. So, wasn't great to see Patrick leave, but I think what we've got in return so far hasn't been too bad.
Well, that's right. He's just got something about him that makes you think back to one of our last club champions, and he's got a long way to go, obviously, but a lad at 18 to have the presence of mind and confidence that he does in his own ability, plus be able to back it up with good disposal, clean ball handling. A couple of pre-seasons into him, at a little bit more size and a little bit more confidence that he belongs, and it could be anything. Imagine a mature Miller running through the midfield. Unbelievable.
I think that's almost the pleasing thing at the moment is that, yes, his talent is on display, and that's fairly obvious for all to see, but just the fact that he knows he's that good, and that when the opportunity arises to waltz past an opposition player, he knows he can do it and he takes it on. So when you're 18, sometimes you can struggle to understand your own ability, and some players, probably i.e. Jack Watts, as we saw today, takes a great mark, and Melbourne are streaming forward and about to level the scores, and then he has no confidence to kick the goal, tries to pass it off, and it goes all the way down the other end for a North Melbourne goal. So confidence is a massive thing for a player, and if you've got it at 18, then that's a massive sign of someone that's going to be a pretty good player in years to come, or at the moment as well.
Yep, I agree 100%. Well, just to round up the discussion, what's your if you're going to do a quick 10-second wrap up, Hank? What would it be on the weekend?
I'd say a team that's looking pretty confident at the moment. Obviously, some areas of improvement to come, but the way that we're moving the ball, the way that we're spreading, and not necessarily relying on weighted numbers is pretty encouraging. So, but as we've been rammed home over and over again, the draw is tough, and every game coming up is going to rely on a pretty outstanding performance to get the win. So, yes, intriguing couple of weeks coming up, I would say.
I don't think that was 10 seconds. I think it was about 23.
20? Oh, sorry about that.
I don't disagree. I think we're a team that's building. We've got loads of talent. I think we're growing into a new game plan that looks very effective. I think there's enough areas to work on that we should still have plenty of improvement left in us. I want to see us play against teams with a more mature and effective structure like your Hawthorns. So the next 2 or 3 weeks, if I was a player in the Adelaide Footy Club, I'd be looking forward to the next 2 or 3 weeks, because I'd really like to know where we sat And I think the next 3 weeks are going to give us the answer to that.
Yeah, and I think, yes, our draw is tough, but you look at the ladder at the moment, and yes, it's only round 3, but there's only 3 teams who are undefeated, and one of them's Gold Coast. So I think it's going to be a pretty even year, and, even if we, let's say we finish the year on 13 wins or something like that, that might be enough for, almost a top 4 finish. Maybe 14 wins, but I think, we can grind out a year and not necessarily have to set the world on fire to finish high up the ladder. So,
well, I'm going to call it right now. I'm just looking at the ladder, and I only reckon there's 9 teams in it. You can take out Brisbane, you can take out Carlton, you can take out Fremantle, you can take out Essendon, you can take out Collingwood, St Kilda, Richmond, Melbourne, and Port Adelaide, in my opinion. That leaves 9 teams that I think have got a genuine chance. I think Port drops out of the current 8. I think Hawthorn come into the current 8, and then I think it's it's pretty much up for grabs after that.
Yeah, exactly. And we haven't had last year was reasonably tight, but we haven't had an extremely close year since probably the 90s, really. When I think, the year that we won the flag in 97, the Saints finished on top with 15 wins. So this might be the first year that sort of happens. And, the Sydney and North, the other 2 teams undefeated, I think you wouldn't expect them to sort of go through the season with a sort of, what would you call it, 16-plus win season either.
No.
So it's all set up for a pretty good year. And I think this weekend showed that the football's going to be pretty good to watch as well. Yeah, and especially the Dogs game, they bit of a sliding doors moment for them. They, they're on the up and they're 3 points up with a minute and a half to go. If they get that win, and certainly springboard them, they lose. Their captain goes down for probably the year, and just a small moment like that can sort of maybe turn the fortunes around. So, no, I think the Crows are well placed at the moment. Put it that way.
Yeah, agree. And I must say, I think I mentioned it earlier, but, it's going to be very interesting to see how the Bulldogs bounce back from that. They could fall in a heap, but they're a very good young team. So I'm actually hoping for the sake of the season that they're able to pull it back together again, because they're exciting to watch. And I think it's nice to see a bit of a changing of the guard. And I think they represent that along with us, probably Gold Coast, and maybe 1 or 2 up and comers that are not quite there yet. Yeah,
and it's hard to predict where it's going to come from, because you sort of think they were as impressive as they were, and they had the game in the bag probably at 3/4 time.
Yeah,
but if they're in as good a form as they are, and they're at home, and they have the Hawks undermanned with a 20-point lead at 3/4 time, and they still can't win, and then their captain goes down for arguably the year, you sort of have to think, as impressive as they were, is that sort of that moment where you realise that as good as they are, that the champs might still be probably a little bit too good for the up-and-coming teams like Adelaide and the Bulldogs. So whether they can take heart of the fact that they were close, or do they get deflated and think, oh, well, this was our opportunity to take a big scalp and we couldn't quite get over the line. So I guess a lot of that comes down to mental toughness, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if I was them, I'd be thinking, well, it's round 3. And we were very close. And look, they probably talked themselves out of winning, to be honest with you, in my mind. They really should have won that game. So, it'll be, and I think we could probably take a similar attitude towards the next 2 as well. Early in the season, new game style, exciting young team. Be great to win. But if we can stick with them and push them, even if we don't win, I think it's a step along the right path. Hank, it's been good talking to you tonight, mate.
Thanks for that. Yeah, it should be. Who are you tipping this week then?
Well, for our game?
Yeah, correct, yeah.
I think we'll probably get Sydney at home. What do you reckon?
Yeah. I think I've tipped this every week, but obviously only because it's been 50-50 and we've been reasonably solid. So, it should be interesting.
Certainly will. All right, mate. On that note, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone who's listening, and we'll see you on Tuesday night for Tuesday Night Live, 8:30 Australian Central Standard Time. Farewell.
See ya.